still had the walker around that I would use, and I had to sit to wash my hair and shower, had to sit to prep food. I couldn't even bend to empty the dishwasher, and ended up having way more fat in my diet. And it was soon after where I started to get up to 80% of my day was fat. And that's where I started to notice a huge improvement and the neuro symptoms starting to leave. Honestly, I still don't believe it. I still wake up every day and it's pinch me. I live a full, vibrant life. I'm active, healthy. I'm not on any medications. My movement is good. I'm fit. It's incredible. I just don't know what else to say other than it's just absolutely incredible.
Today my guest is Mimi, and we're going to go over her amazing journey on how she was on 12 plus medications, a list of diagnoses including a recent stroke and Parkinson's disease, not being able to walk more than 5 feet without a walker, spending most of your time in bed in a hospital, to now she just signed up for a 500-mile trail walk in Europe to celebrate her 70th birthday this fall. And then she's on 0 medications, no longer classified as having Parkinson's disease. Please stick around for the whole video. We're going to talk about what she used to eat versus what she eats now, her workout routine, so what strengthening looks like for her, and then some other simple lifestyle tips that anybody can implement to see drastic improvement in how they look, how they feel, and then their overall health. Thanks again for being here, and without further ado, let's welcome Mimi. Thanks again for being here. So I think before we talk about your background, so what your life like was before, could you give us like a 30-second spiel of like what your life is like now? Because I think that like most people want to achieve what you have achieved at the age of 69, almost 70. Like you're just doing so great.
It's fabulous. Honestly, I still don't believe it. I still wake up every day and it's pinch me. I live a full, vibrant life. I'm active. Back, to I was in my 40s and early 50s. There's no limitations. I feel wonderful. I'm healthy. I'm not on any medications. My movement is good. I'm fit. It's incredible. I just don't know what else to say other than it's just absolutely incredible.
Wow, that's amazing. And in the intro, I said a little bit like, you're on a bunch of medications, which a lot of people are at the age of 69. And you had a stroke. I don't know how the severity of your stroke, but you can tell us a little bit about that. You had Parkinson's disease, and then you had spinal MRSA in the hospital from an IV following your stroke, which is, for those of you who don't know what that is a big deal. That is like what you want to avoid in the hospital, because it can cause a lot of complications and it could be a life or death situation. So can you rewind, tell us what your life was like before? And then we'll kind of go into, how you are, who you are today.
Okay. So my life was good before I started to get sick. I really worked myself in the ground when I think back into it in the 40s and 50s and stopped taking care of myself. I was very active before, adventuresome, and neglected it like some of us. We often do. We have responsibilities, and my hours were long. And initially, I had a bad fall, broke my wrist. It set me, what I consider set me off into a downward spiral. My body just really started attacking itself from every front. And the first thing was Dupuytren's, which came up first, and we were able to stop that with radiation. Then rheumatoid arthritis I was diagnosed with.
Wow.
Was on a ton of medication for that, the biologics, the prednisone for almost 2 years, and methotrexate, the Plaquenil. Finally, the biologics put it to rest. And then 2 years to the month, I was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. And tremor was the one symptom I did not have. I had rigidity.
Okay.
Rigidity. I had a little one in the finger. I had a voice tremor, but I had all the other symptoms, plus a lot of unusual symptoms that don't happen in the beginning. So within a year, I became a multiple system atrophy suspect, and that's a Parkinson's plus. Usually looks the same as Parkinson's for the first 5 years, and then after that you deteriorate and maybe have 3 more years to live.
Wow.
So yeah, I was a suspect for that, and then released at 5 years. It didn't progress, and
How old were you when this was, first starting? When you were getting these
so
diagnoses?
let's see. So I'm 69, probably about 59, maybe 60 when it started.
Okay.
Yeah. And pretty fast. So yeah, I would say that, almost 10 years. It'll be 5 years in February since I had the stroke. I had everything else 4 or 5 years. So about that,
Okay.
59, 60.
I do want to hear a lot about your stroke. First, I'd like to dedicate this conversation that you and I are having to my mom, who also had an unexpected stroke in her early 60s, and it changes your life. And she's very grateful about where she's at today. But any stroke survivor knows that it is a hard road, and it's possible to recover, but it obviously depends on the severity of it. So I do want you to kind of talk to us a little bit about that as well.
Sure. I will. So it's 5 years ago, February. I actually had a great day. I was not doing well with the Parkinson's, had to stop working. My was on a ton of medication, 1,200 milligrams of carbidopa, levodopa, and that's an enormous amount for somebody at my stage. I really had maxed it out. Was taking every 3.5 hours just to function in the day. But
Wow.
I had a good day, and it was a beautiful day in February, as it can be here, and went and sat on a bench. And at first I didn't think it was a stroke. I thought I was just dizzy, little low blood pressure, and it wasn't. Luckily somebody was there. It was at nighttime and it was deserted, and two guys were running, were getting ready to run, and I was able to call out and to them, and it was within 30 seconds after I knew I was having a stroke.
Wow. Okay.
I couldn't speak, my whole left side. I had a TIA about 8 years prior on the same side, so I did definitely recognize the symptoms.
Sure.
Yeah. Luckily I got TPA.
Okay. A lot of the viewers might not know what TPA is.
I'll let you explain that one.
Sure. Yeah, it is a drug that you need, at least when I learned in school, like within the first 3 hours of knowing you have a stroke. So time is of the essence. So if you don't know the signs of a stroke, Google them today, because if you can get TPA, it can really save your life and your function. So I rarely meet people who get TPA. So you must have had really quick, amazing medical attention.
I did. I think, I actually don't remember anything until I woke up in the ambulance. From the time that I knew I was having a stroke, they were calling emergency. And then after that, I really don't remember anything till I was in the hospital. But the stroke center is about 15 minutes from me. And I'm going to guess I got TPA within 45 minutes.
That's amazing. It must be a
really fast.
Yeah.
And I had a medium-sized stroke by the length of, and I forget all the term, but depending on how long you have the symptoms, how long you can't move, how long you can't speak, all of that, a lot of that dictates what kind of stroke. The head of the stroke clinic actually was my doctor, and I had a medium stroke. I was in the hospital for 3 days. And I came through fine. Actually, through all the things that I've gone through, the stroke was what I came through the best.
Okay. And so did you contract the MRSA during this time around your stroke?
Well, they released me, and 24 hours later, I had passed out. Luckily, my daughter caught me because I went back in my head. And they figured out about 12, 15 hours later that I was infected with the IV when I was at the hospital.
Okay.
And originally it was staph A, which is not good either. It's just not drug resistant. But as the story would play out, I was drug resistant. And then they, at this point, suspected that I had MRSA because I just wasn't responding to how I should have.
Sure.
So yes, the IV, and probably most likely the IV in the ambulance.
Okay.
where I was given, but also the hospital didn't do something that they were supposed to do, which, um, and they definitely said it was from the IV.
Okay. So then, like leading up to this point, we know you have the diagnosis of Parkinson's. So your mobility probably isn't what it was when you were in your like 30s and early 40s. And then you have this MRSA, the stroke, a couple of hospital day stay. What was your mobility like over the next few weeks?
It wasn't good. They released me after 11 days. Unfortunately, the drug the second antibiotic that was working, they took me off of. They sent me home with a PICC line and a walker. And I had physical therapy, home nurse. My mobility was not good. I got around with a walker, and it was not easy.
Right.
At all. And I was at my daughter's and son-in-law's, and I was ready to go home to my place. And I lived in a townhouse at 27 steps. I did make it up the first 13 steps. And prior to that, I walked a mile with a walker. I really was trying, but I wasn't feeling well. So I did that mile, got up to my 13 steps, and went to retire for the night. And I went to go take a step, and this just was not going to happen. And that's when I was rushed back to the hospital, and it was discovered that the bacteria had spread to my spine. I had osteomyelitis discitis, which means that the bacteria had eaten my spine, and my disc was collapsing. It was also in my spinal canal, which put me at threat of dying pretty rapidly, especially if it ruptured. And that's where I had had emergency surgery that night for just debridement, where they hose you out. It was in my muscles, and that's where I was in the hospital for a good 6 to 8 weeks. Also had neutropenia. The antibiotics destroyed my white blood cells. They said it was the worst case that they've seen, other than somebody with going through chemo.
Wow.
So I was in the hospital for even longer, and then I was released to rehab after finally vancomycin was the antibiotic.
Oh my gosh. How long were you in a rehab facility?
I was in 3 weeks. I was in where I had
That's a
physical
long time.
therapy a couple times a day.
Yeah, that's a long time. Did you have home health when you went home after
I
rehab?
did. I did. In physical therapy, I went home with a walker.
Right. And that's what I do every day. So, after this talk, this is,
Yeah.
who I'm going to go see. Mimi's who just got out or have elective surgeries. And it's a long road. Like people think the finish line is being home. And quite frankly, it's like, it's the starting point, right? Because you go
Yes.
home and you still have deficits. So Mimi, like what was like the turning point? Like, cause in the traditional model, like someone sent home, someone like me comes in, a nurse comes in to help people get back to like, their prior level of function at best. And sometimes people don't get there, but you went way past a prior level of function to really changing your life. So like, did you have to like ignore like traditional advice from your doctors, dietitians, nurses, PTs, or what happened?
So I actually did for the first year and a half physical therapy for almost 15 months, and had graduated to a cane. Still had the walker around that I would use. Still limited function. Had to sit to wash my hair and shower. Had to sit to prep food. I couldn't even bend to empty the dishwasher. My mobility was not great, though. I did walk. I was working on it. And in about 15 months of physical therapy, they said, "Look, it's just nothing better is going to happen."
Right.
And it was shortly after, at a moment where my mailbox story, where I really was ready to give up. My family is just now thinking, well, we need to start considering and talking about pretty soon putting you in a home, because I'm still kind of going in a downward spiral, still sick, still very weak. So it was almost after coming home, almost close to a year and a half, where I had that moment of giving up. And for me, it was a divine moment as I'm turning around really in defeat because I couldn't get past this mailbox a few blocks from my house. I was presented with a question, and the question was, so you can't walk as far as you want. What can you do? And I stopped and scanned, and my answer was, I've got 10 steps in me. That was all the energy I had, 10 more steps. And I took those 10 steps, and that really was the turning point for me.
Wow. So it was like, meeting yourself where you're at. What can my body do
Exactly.
today? Okay. And then, so after those 10 steps, what happened?
I did those 10 steps every day without thinking about it.
Wow.
And then I realized I had I've always been very lean, and I had put on some weight because one of the downsides of the Parkinson's medication is you have to avoid fat and protein. It's typically a higher carb diet and then a little bit of protein, not very much fat. I also had been fat starved. So I went to go see somebody just to help me. I needed to get some weight. I was in a lot of pain. My pain level was 6 or 7, and I don't take pain meds. So, it wears on you being chronically ill and then also being chronically in pain. And I had pain from rheumatoid arthritis. I had pain from Parkinson's. The rigidity can cause pain and the slowness of movement. And so he presented to me a different approach, and that was a high fat, high protein diet.
What kind of provider was this who recommended
He
that?
was a chiropractor.
Okay, cool. Okay, nice.
And I had been on plant-based, really, with very little protein, with very little beef. And at first, I thought he was absolutely nuts, that he was going to kill me.
Sure, right.
But I didn't have any other option, really, at this point, because they kept piling medications on me. And so I listened to him, and in 30 days, I don't want to say I felt better, but I didn't feel worse. And I had been feeling worse as the months were going by. And that gave me some hope. And I kept at it. And in about 6 months, I started to notice energy improvement. I added a lot of beef.
Yeah, what were you eating at that time?
So 50% of my diet was fat. That meant I had to eat a lot of beef and the fat on the beef. Some fish, very little chicken, a few vegetables, though I eliminated nightshades and vegetables with lectins at this point. And then, 25% protein. And it just was a marked improvement. And no sugar, I don't drink anyway, but no sugar, no gluten, just really basic diet of just clean foods and keeping my carbs low. And then, I'm learning to track a different, trying to get my fat in, my protein. I'm finding that I'm having to track. I'm sometimes missing the mark, and ended up having way more fat in my diet. And it was soon after where I started to get up to 80% of my day was fat. And that's where I started to notice a huge improvement and the neuro symptoms starting to leave.
Wow, what symptoms specifically did you notice were getting better?
Well, my sleep improved, my movement improved, my thinking was improved, because I was having trouble with executive function, and that started to go. I started to notice that I didn't need to take my medication every 3.5 hours. I could wait 4.5.
Wow.
Before it would wear off. I mean, absolutely everything across the board.
At this time, were you seeing a neurologist? I mean, I'm guessing you were seeing a neurologist because you had a stroke and you had the Parkinson. So,
yeah,
were they worried about you?
Well, not yet, because I kept it quiet. I was seeing a movement disorder specialist. They are specifically trained for Parkinson's. And then I had definitely a neurologist for the stroke. I also had a neurosurgeon. Probably every week or two I was seeing a specialist. I had everything but a kidney specialist at this point. Mm-hmm. I just had just so many doctors, it's unreal. And I didn't say anything because I knew they weren't going to like it. I knew they were going to say, well, your medication's not going to work. You're going to have another stroke. You're eating fat. And I just kept it to myself. I actually didn't even share a whole lot with my family. Or anybody else. I just kept doing what was working for. I'm getting better. So I'm just not I'm just going to keep it to myself.
Right. I mean, similarly, like my dad went to his cardiologist. This is a conversation from my mom. And, he's doing great. He's lowering his A1C. And, clearly the patient in front of him is improving. And the cardiologist's recommendation is, I want you to switch to a plant-based diet. It's
Yeah.
like, okay, sometimes I think we have tunnel vision as healthcare providers, and we just stick to the traditional advice that we either learned in school or we're reading even in like the top journals.
Yeah.
And we don't look at the person in front of us. Like, is this person doing well or are they not doing well?
Right.
Okay.
And they didn't want to hear. I mean, they didn't want to hear. And I would say probably 60% of my doctors were all plant-based, which is, why I was doing that. I mean, and so I just decided I'm just not going to share the information with them. And then I started to find, well, as the symptoms are going away across the board. I think the first drug that I got rid of was, I was on omeprazole twice a day. I mean, no surprise, the medications I'm on alone, let alone anything I'm eating, of course, I'm going to have the worst heartburn in the world. But now I'm not. So why do I need to take omeprazole if I don't have heartburn?
Right.
So I started to eliminate medications as the symptoms for whatever the medications I was giving for were improving.
So you're at this point like self-deprescribing your medications based on just like putting your own thinking cap on, like, hey, I don't have heartburn, so do I really need this medicine anymore?
Right.
Okay. Were you on blood pressure medication?
No, I wasn't. I tend to have a low blood pressure, but no,
Okay.
it's that. No, I wasn't on that.
Okay. I'm doing a video in a couple weeks with a physician. We're going to go over specifics of how to, work with your doctor, assuming they're willing to, eventually get off this hypertension medication if you're willing to commit to diet and lifestyle changes. Okay.
Right.
All right. So back to you. So this diet's really working that the chiropractor recommended. And would you call it like a ketogenic diet, or would just no name?
Well, I became ketogenic, so,
Okay.
I don't think 25% carbs is a low carb diet. I'm becoming ketogenic, and when I'm high ketogenic at the 85% fat was really when I noticed the neuro, and I stick with that, even supplementing MCT oil if I couldn't miss my mark for a year and a half, not wavering.
Okay. And then how long did that diet keep you feeling great? And then when did you change to what you primarily eat right now? Or is it really similar then?
Yeah, well, it's really actually similar. There, though I would eat occasional vegetables, I eventually eliminate them. So a year and a half, and now I am down to 2 medications.
Wow.
At that. And faithfully, I stuck with it. I did not waver. Holidays, I did not break it one bit. And I'm now walking, I couldn't walk, a couple blocks, maybe a quarter mile, but I'd be set back. I'm now walking 2 miles. I'm now having some movement without a cane. I mean, everything across the board. And my diet, I went carnivore about 14 months or 13 months ago. It was last January. I just decided to try it. And I want to back up. I believe this is one of the questions, when I did the keto, it was Keen Keto. And that is I don't do, the packaged chips. I don't do the package, the bars. It's just was real nutrient rich food, because that's the food that would heal me long term. And that was what my goal was. And anything that's manufactured is not going to do that.
Right. So you just said goodbye to ultra processed food entirely.
Yes. And luckily I grew up not eating ultra processed food, but when you're trying to, maybe in the beginning I might have a keto bar or something because you're missing some things that you had before. But no, I wanted food that was going to heal me in the long run, and anything that's processed is not going to. And there's a lot of foods that are labeled keto that aren't going to help your body heal or sustain itself with nutrients.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah, that was somebody's question, like the differences between keto and like your more animal-based approach now, like,
right.
why did you do that? And it sounds like it was out of curiosity last year, hey, what would
Well,
this do for me?
yeah, I kind of wanted to push the envelope a little bit. I started weight training. I'm coming up on 2 years. I started weight training, and it's been absolutely, when I started, I was diagnosed with borderline osteoporosis. They wanted me to go on medications, and I said, absolutely not. And I also realized, I might be walking, I can walk 8 miles, I can hike at high altitude but I was pretty skinny and frail.
Okay.
And, uh, and I've had quite a few breaks, just simple falls, and I break bones, and I realized, oh, I need to hit the gym. And I felt well enough to hit the gym. I mean, that's the big point of here is this, hitting it when you're not feeling well is pretty tough. But I was feeling good. And then when I hit the gym, I I started actually to crave and find I needed more of that beef and that protein because I'm working hard. And that's when I switched this January or last
Okay.
January, because we're already in, to carnivore, basically eggs. I make my own kimchi, a few eggs, beef. I do have fish, a little bit of bacon. It's always sugar free. And just keeping my diet really simple. I'm still working on healing. I'm prone to infections because of the MRSA that was allowed to seed in my body for so long. They believe it's encapsulated still inside of me. So I'm working on trying to heal, getting from infections. So I thought, well, I'm just going to streamline my diet even more.
Yeah. Do you eat sauerkraut as well? I know you've shared
I
your
do. I
amazing
make my own.
sauerkraut.
I do make my own.
Okay. Okay. Any
Yeah,
foods that we missed that were on that list? So it sounds like kimchi, a lot of eggs, beef, some fish,
yeah. Little
sauerkraut,
bacon,
little bacon.
a
Right,
little
right.
bacon, and then for a treat in the summertime, I'll ferment blueberries. There'll be salt brined blueberries. You know, and then I also too, if I travel or if I'm going out, I make a conscious decision if it's something special. And I might have carpaccio with arugula. I'm not going to just have the arugula salad. I'm going to have the carpaccio, and I'll eat some of the arugula that's on the plate. So I watch what I do, but I'm not super rigid.
And I imagine you're getting the positive feedback with the way you feel and you're no longer needing medications. So clearly what you're doing is working for your body. How often do you do lab work?
I haven't done it in a while.
Yeah.
I need to. The last time I did lab work, so I believe I'm a lean mass hyper responder. My
Sure.
uh, and I also do intermittent fasting as well, and sometimes longer fasts. And I did do a longer fast before my lab work, not realizing how that could affect my lab. So my cholesterol was high. My
Mhm.
triglycerides are 56. My ratio is 57, which is just absolutely stellar numbers.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah.
And for
Uh,
folks that don't know what a hyper responder is, I can link Dr. Norwitz's video on that in the description. You touched on intermittent fasting, and one of the questions that we had was, this is from Heather, so I think this is a good time to talk about it. Did you use any resources when you started this way of eating? I know that on some of your Twitter posts, you've mentioned Dr. Ben Bikman's book, Why We Get Sick.
right.
Um, can you talk a little bit about that, or anything else that was a resource, or did you just kind of just do this on your own?
Well, so I worked with this gentleman who I met once a week. So he certainly helped me. And no, I mean, if you go clean keto, you get a really simple list. It's a great way to start. It healed me. Uh, and I still pretty much consider that am keto. It's just that, uh, keto carnivore, because I try to get my fat up that high. I did use an app called, there's a free version, which works good enough, and that's called MyFitnessPal. But there are plenty where you can track your carbs and your protein and your fat. And I would plan out my meal in the day and enter in the numbers. That way I knew what I could adjust and aiming for, rather than a lot of people enter their numbers at the end. And then they miss the mark. So I definitely did. I planned my food, what my meal was for the day. And, after a while, you just don't need to track, because if you have a limited menu, you just know what a steak is going to be. You're going to get the fat you need from that steak.
Sure. But I do think that is a really good tool if someone's just starting out. So MyFitnessPal, the free app, I actually use it maybe like once every couple, 3 months, just as like a reset.
I
Um,
do as well.
yeah. And I think having like a kitchen scale helps me too. Just like a reminder, okay, like, is this really 5 ounces or like, what is
Right,
this? And again, this is not me being crazy. It's just, I feel better when it's just dialed in.
right,
So I
right.
don't care what other people think. This works for me, and that method sounds like it works for you too.
Yeah, it does. I don't weigh. I really eat, since I have such a limited diet, and it's just become so intuitive. I eat till I'm full. Days I work out, I could go 1 to 1.5 pounds of beef, and I'm pretty tiny, but I can when I work out, I'm hungry, and so I'll eat that.
Yeah.
At days I won't eat as much, so it all works out. And I know what a pound of beef is.
Someone else asked, Steve asked this on, I think he's one of your Twitter followers. He was wondering, because you eat such a limited diet, if you could create some sort of food insensitivity. I don't know the science behind this, but good question, fair. And then will there come a time when you reintroduce foods? And it sounds like you were just saying like, yeah, like sometimes I'll have arugula with like meat when I'm on vacation. Is this a
Right.
concern for you, or is just you're just feeling great, so no
Well,
worries?
I'm feeling great, so until I feel great, I'm going to stick with it. I am doing strict carnivore this month, except for I do like my coffee in the morning. So I am just having beef and coffee, water, and salt. When February comes, I will introduce back seafood, wild seafood, not farmed, and um, a little bit of bacon, which I use as a garnish, and oysters I will introduce. And I think I'll stick with that diet
Yeah,
for
is
quite
there
a
a reason
while.
you're doing the strict carnivore this month? I think some people
Yeah.
think that's just so wacky and it's so non-mainstream. And I'm sure your doctors think it's just like, sending you to an early grave. So
Yeah.
talk to us why someone would want to do that for a month, especially
Uh,
someone like you who's feeling so well.
well, I fired all my doctors, but two that I have
You don't need them.
so that I don't need them. I don't have anything wrong with me. Why do I need them? Well, it does sound crazy, but I feel so good health wise. Why would I want to even do anything that would remotely bring me back to where I was?
Yeah.
I mean, it's really that simple. And people say, well, don't you miss eating normal? Well, this is my normal now. And those foods that I might have ate before that I gave up that weren't making me well, why would I want to eat those?
Hmm.
Um, and every decision I make about what I eat and how I live is what's good for my longevity, what's good for my health, what makes me feel better. And that's what I focus on, and then it's really easy for me to make those decisions.
I love that. Let's shift into this whole strength training thing.
Okay.
Jim, another one of your followers, he's observed lifting weights appears to have really impacted your mental health and your physical health as you recovered and now. And his question is, should all of us be doing strength and weight training to, age optimally? I can speak to this as well, but I think it's really, I think it's more valuable hearing it from like someone who's actually done it.
Yeah. Absolutely. Strength training took me from feeling well to soaring. I really feel unstoppable at this point.
So what does
Uh,
that look like for you? And could somebody do it at home or in the gym, or do you think it has to be at like a gym?
uh, so no, I actually train. My trainer is at the senior center, and I purposely chose. She's 75. She's wonderful. I write about her on Twitter. I call her the boss.
I love that.
So,
I love those
yeah.
tweets.
And I call that to her face, and she looks at me, and I said, "That's your name," and she loves it. But she is never hurt me, never protects me. She works because she's at a senior center with people that are older. She's very mindful of what my back. We had to work through a lot of things, including a partial rotator cuff tear, torn meniscus, and my back was pretty bad. My spine had to self-fuse, she's kept me safe. So I purposely, because of that, and because I tend to over push and don't always know better, I really wanted somebody to watch my form and to make sure I didn't injure my back. So for me, it was imperative that I hire a trainer. If I didn't have back problems, all you need is your body to build strength. There are so many things that you can do with your body that you don't even need exercise equipment. If you want it, there's a few things you can do, so you don't need to go to a gym. Some people work better if they go to a gym and feel they're more accountable, especially if they pay a fee. So I would definitely recommend it. I was training 4 times a week. It was a little bit too much. So we're going to try 3 times a week is what my new routine. We reassess everything every 3 months. I will say, from the moment I started weight training, it went on my calendar before doctor's appointments, hair appointments, nails, dates, events, girlfriend lunches, everything. It is the first thing that goes on my calendar, and the rest of my life works around it. And that's been key for a mindset. It's not something that I cancel unless I'm sick or there's an emergency or I'm out of town.
I love that. So you're really prioritizing yourself because you want to stay
Yes,
strong and independent
correct.
as you age.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't know anybody who doesn't want that.
Yeah.
I like your recommendation. I think that you can work out at home if you're very disciplined, and like that's, where you feel best. I think gyms are great too. What you're doing, like going to a senior center or community center, is what I recommend to all my patients. And I think very few of them take the advice or the recommendation. And, there's some barriers, like maybe they don't drive, they're intimidated because they've never stepped foot in a gym. A lot of these programs are free or very affordable. I know that it can be really intimidating. My own mom, who right before she turned 69 last December, week before Thanksgiving, she's like, I'm going to join gym. Like you, she had a stroke 5 years ago. So now her and my dad go every day. I affectionately call her a gym rat.
Oh,
and it's still
good,
scary
good.
for her. I went visited them back home last week, and she's like looking at the machines, like, can I use this? Can I not? And it's got to be intimidating, but you just show up. There are people there that will help you. If you feel like totally lost, you can hire a trainer for a few times to really get you familiar with the equipment. And it's just such a fantastic investment in anyone's health. And then the other benefits from like a healthcare provider standpoint is strong bones, so
Yes.
if you do fall, it's nice to be able to have those strong bones through what you eat, diet, and how you strengthen those bones through resistance training. So that's like really key, because a fracture can really set you back as we age. So that's really great. Any other things you want to talk about in terms of like strengthening or your physical fitness? Do you walk a lot still?
I do walk a lot. I'm trying to find a different routine with that, with my training, but I do walk a lot. I do some rowing. I actually plan to walk 500 miles for my 70th birthday this September. It's 35 day trek to do the French Way.
Wow. What is the French Way? Can you explain it for
listeners
who've never heard of it?
It's the pilgrimage that St. Francis of Assisi did. It's not only physically challenging, 15 to 20 miles a day. It's also a spiritual pilgrimage. It is something that I've wanted to do for decades. I gave it up when I was sick, and just started to think about it again a few months ago, and then made the plunge and starting to make the plans to do it.
That's so inspiring. Who are you going to do it with?
Well, I'm going to do it with a group, solo, not with anybody I know. My daughter and husband, 10 years ago, I would have done it alone. I won't now for a number of reasons do it alone. And then my daughter and son-in-law, who generously gifted me a trip of or an adventure, whatever I want to do, because that's something that I love, are going to be waiting for me when I get to the town and to the cathedral to cheer me on as I do my last steps of my 500 miles.
That's amazing. Wow. Such an inspiration. I want to do it. That sounds like amazing.
So the only other thing that I just want to add, I know some people say, well, I'm in bad shape. I can't do a lot, I can't push. And why my 10 steps is my favorite story, because that's all I had in me. And doing those 10 steps every day, those 10 steps for somebody who, I backpacked carrying 65 pounds previous, and now I'm reduced to doing 10 steps. Those were 10 difficult steps for me. And they were day in and day out. And just adding 10 more steps a day, which is not even across a room, just the act of doing that outside, whether it's with a walker, and I, at this point now, did it with a cane, really changed my mindset. Was a gentler approach. I wasn't tough on myself because I couldn't make this or couldn't make that. And I did it consistently every day. And for a year and a half, I couldn't get to a mile. And in 9 months, I was walking 2 miles by doing the 10 steps.
Wow. So that was kind of like your mantra every day.
Well, it just was. I just did it every day. And it just, there's something about that consistency, and you slowly build. And when you're really sick and when things are really hard, and especially as you get older, I think sometimes really that's the faster route than trying to push and then having a setback.
Right, exactly. Because setbacks can be so frustrating. And that was
They
Val,
can.
one of your followers' questions. She's 59, postmenopausal, and she identifies as a deconditioned athlete. She got in an auto accident a few years ago and then was hit with like a bad case of COVID. And she feels like, even light activity, she's short of breath and discouraged. And I
Right.
meet those folks every day as well,
I bet.
for whatever reason, they feel deconditioned. And that, I love your 10-step story. I just say, start where you're at,
Yes.
and you can just the 1% better every day mindset, and consistency is key. But it can't just be physical activity. And I think that that's where many people are missing the mark, right? They continue to eat
Right.
the standard American diet because that's what,
Yes.
commercials are telling them to do. That's what they've always
Right.
done. That's probably what their doctor's telling them to do, unfortunately, and dietitians. And, they just can't get ahead. So what is your advice outside of that to those folks?
Well, for me, it was changing my diet. Clearly, was that. Then I started to get. I happen to love being outside. I grew up in the country. Started to make sure that I got more sun. I got morning sun in the day, afternoon sun. If you follow me, I am a big sunrise watcher. I go head out to the beach. I'm also doing cold sunrise, which I'm not recommending to anybody to start off with that, but I've just introduced cold sunrise swims in the ocean. Grounding, really focused on my sleep. Without good sleep, you are not going to heal. And I had quite a few sleep disturbances that were neuro related, and my sleep was horrible. And now I get between 8 and 10 hours a day, depending on the day. Sometimes, maybe once a week I'll have a bad day. Last week I had a couple. Not sure what that was about. I avoid blue light. So I have a ritual at night. I turn off my lights. I light candles. I unplug earlier. And I'm very mindful of the blue lights that can disturb your circadian rhythm. I soak in magnesium, especially when my muscles are sore after a hard workout, magnesium flakes at bath. And I really focus on all of those things that really add to your good health. And it is absolutely paid off.
Yeah. So let's kind of, I just want to tie like the whole morning sun and like avoiding the blue light thing at night. So you're saying like avoiding screens at night, and then the whole morning sun thing is it really helps to set our circadian rhythm so that we're
Yes.
awake during the day and then we wind down at night. So what did you notice when you started doing the whole morning sun thing?
I just, one, it's gorgeous. So that gave me really was a grateful heart. It's like a light show every morning. I mean, how can you just not just have a heart filled of gratitude and hopeful? To me, and I say it a lot, I say it's a promise of a new day. You could have a horrible day the day before, maybe movement's hard, maybe you're feeling under the weather, but just greeting the sun is to me the promise of a new day and hope. And that's important, especially if you're healing. But for me, it's, and I feel pretty much healed. I just continue to do it because it really changes my outlook. Plus it's good for you, the sun. And it's a ritual that just brightens my day.
Right. And I think a lot of people are probably concerned about like the UV, but it's pretty low in the first thing in the morning. So
It is low. I don't worry about it. I don't sunbathe in the middle of the day, but before 10 o'clock, I don't wear sunscreen, but I get my sun. It really it recharges me, and my energy is absolutely through the roof.
like any other simple like lifestyle tips that you can recommend? You've shared a lot with us, but things that maybe you didn't do before that you do now that really add value to your life.
Well, I did before when I was sick. I didn't. I stopped doing it. It was pretty hard to function every day. I really felt a lot in survival mode. So trying to add anything, and my spirits were low, but I do meditate. Meditation and prayer is part of my life, and I do meditate once or twice a day. That definitely is a part of my routine. My favorite is it's a little chilly now, but my favorite is to sit on my porch overlooking the marsh, and I meditate, and my eyes open up. Usually, an hour meditation, my eyes open up times to the sun rising, and that's just a great experience. Uh, the senior center was good for me. I made friends. It was good to be active. I tend to isolate. I definitely did when I wasn't well. I just didn't want to see anybody. I didn't want to do it with anything. And then just making friends at the senior center really was good. So people are in a bad way and you have a senior center. I really encourage it. There's other activities, and all of those help you and your well-being when you can fill your life with as much joy, especially when you're dealing with difficult things.
Yeah, so having some sort of community, and that might look different when you're in your 30s, 40s versus like 80s and
Right.
90s, but it is huge. I think it's easy to kind of sequester yourself as we age. But I see in my own patients, the ones who still have that community get out of the house, whether it's going to a senior center or like meeting their kid for lunch once in a while. These
Right.
are really big things. Your social life, what does that look like outside of going to the senior center? Or do you spend a lot of time alone?
No, I have alone time. I have friends. I am single. I hope that changes. Um, if it doesn't, it doesn't. I have a full life. I work part time. I love the senior center. I work part time, and I work in the fitness. So I do a couple shifts. Only supposed to be one a week. I end up doing more, but I work back in the fitness. I like it. It's fun. It's good for me to be out. I travel some. I have family. I have friends that I'm active with. Uh, let's see what else I do. I actually just I was a accomplished equestrian uh, and love horses. I'm not sure I'll be able to ride again with my back. I'm not sure I'm going to risk falling. You can't be a good rider without falling, and you can't ride being fearful. So I'm not sure I'll ride again. I'm not sure I'm going to take that risk, but I am going to volunteer, and that'll get me back in the barn. I've just actually got the paperwork filled out and in the mail yesterday. I'm excited about that. I hope that works out. I love being around the barn. I volunteered also recently to do something with the library, doing some research for the Friends of the Library big book sale. About 125,000 books run through. So I stayed pretty active. I definitely have my alone time, which is good, but I have my training with my trainer a couple times a week, my walks, my beach time. Honestly, my days are really full.
That's great. Yeah, I mean, it sounds like your blueprint is really good. I
Well,
hope people listening
yeah, I'm still here, so why not live life full? Which is
totally.
why it's been important for me to rekindle. I'm adventuresome, and I just love, especially when it's tied with the outdoors. I'm not reckless, but I'm definitely adventuresome. And so renewing that, which I just started about the last 2 years, really after weight training gave me the energy where I started to think about adding more of that adventure that I had, in my 50s before I got sick. And that's just really taken my mood, my spirit, everything to a whole new level. having that back in my life, because it is a part of who I am. And, I might temper what adventure looks like now. I'm certainly not going to carry a 65-pound backpack for 10 days, which I had done in my late 40s. I'm not going to do that again, but there are things I can do that fuels that spirit of mine at my age.
Yeah. Mimi, I have one more question. So I imagine that over the years you've gotten some pushback because you're doing things that are different than most people.
Yeah.
So did that ever bother you? And then what advice do you have for folks that are clearly making huge improvements in their life, but people are worried because they're, eating beef again, or whatever it is that you're getting pushback from family, your healthcare providers? And what's your best advice there
on that? Well, I ignore the healthcare providers. I just do. I just walk away and ignore them. I recently had one last fall tell me I was going to live to 100, but by the way, take a statin just to make sure. And I just like, no,
right.
we're not even having a discussion. And the truth is, they're there to give advice. Doesn't mean I have to take it. I get to make my own decisions. And if I can find a new one, or just don't go. And not going, since there's nothing wrong, works. My family was very supportive. There was pushback, which was really interesting. It was a little tough. When I got well was when I got the pushback. Okay, so you're doing well. Why are you still doing this? And it's like, it was really interesting. It was a little bit hard. I had a bit of a tough time, but I ignored them. And now they're back to just keep doing what you're doing because it's working. So I'm really not sure what that was about. Some people have that happen to them. If people ask me questions, I'll tell them. I don't offer advice. A lot of people think I've lost my mind because they'll hear from somebody else that this is how I eat. And I just ignore it. I am well, and it's good. They can have their opinion, whatever they want. I just don't let it bother me. It's my life. I get to make my choices. And I didn't get through everything that I got through to be swayed by somebody else who doesn't know me like I know my body now.
Yeah. And I think that takes, some practice and confidence to just be like, hey, this works for me.
Yeah.
I don't really get pushback about the way I eat. And maybe that's just like the circle I surround myself with. But in 2020, I do have a drink on occasion now, but I didn't drink in 2020. And I even got pushback from like my therapist at the time.
Yeah.
And friends and family, like, well, why? Like, have a drink to relax. Like,
Right.
Wasn't a great year for me. And I just, instead of saying like, it's bad for your health or things like that, I really just had to say, it's good for me. Like, I get sad when I drink. I don't sleep well when I drink. Right. And really, I think when you say how it impacts you versus like one's health, people don't get offended by it anymore, and they stop asking questions.
Right. Well, I haven't had a drink in 37 years. I just say I don't like it.
Yeah.
They just ignore. Yeah.
Right. I don't like it. I like that. That's a good response too.
Yeah.
Because I think people can get like offended, with the food thing too, right?
Well, right. Because if you say I do it for my health, well, that sort of suggests, well, maybe they aren't caring about their health.
Exactly.
So I just say, well, this works for me and I got better this way, so I'm just going to stick with what works.
Yeah. And I think that's a good way to phrase things anyway, right? Like we can make decisions for ourselves. What works for you might not work for me, and who cares, right?
And if they know me well enough, they know my story and they know why. If they don't know me well enough, then it doesn't really matter. That they don't need that information. They just know that I don't. And you will get pushback. I think most people do.
Yeah.
But that's okay. It's a good lesson about setting boundaries. It's a good lesson in saying, no, thank you. I don't want that piece of cake. And the rewards of how I'm living are just monumental. So I'm just not going to be swayed.
Yeah, I love it. Well, Mimi, this was such a pleasure, and I think that a lot of people are going to find some value in the things that you've taught us today. You've been making the rounds, so can you tell us about some recent podcasts you've done, some future ones you're doing, and then where people can find you? I met you through Twitter and was just like blown away by your post because I think they're
Oh,
inspiring. So where can people
yeah.
find
Oh,
you?
thank you. I appreciate it. I enjoy following you as well. I'm on Instagram. It's a small account. I'm still trying to figure out how to work Instagram, which is
Me
why
too.
it's small. The posts are a little bit harder to do. And the long ones are hard, and some of mine can be long to explain. It's the same name, Mimi K. Morgan, on Instagram as well, as far as Twitter. So I think perhaps this week, if not the beginning of next, I did a podcast with Shawn Baker, Dr. Shawn Baker.
Yeah.
Uh, uh, you know, quick, a little bit different format, great question and answer. He's an ortho surgeon, and so it was really interesting. With the spine and everything with that, but we talked about a lot. So about that one, I did one with Dr. Brian Lenskis. I think that may be out in the following week. I did one with Vinny, JT Carnivore, and Maggie, Off of the Couch, and those are all on my profile page. But I'll announce them as they go. I do have a couple scheduled. I have an article that I was asked to write for a great Renegade Health magazine that will be coming out in spring, and maybe a couple other things. But definitely you'll find me on Twitter every day.
Yeah, and I'll link your Twitter account so people can kind of follow along.
Okay, great, thank you.
I think those conversations with the people that you just mentioned, I follow all of them on Twitter, and they're amazing accounts and all different lens, different questions. So
Yes.
I'll link your account so people can find you, and stay tuned for those.
Okay.
Again, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
And just keep going. You're doing awesome.
All right. Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Right. Bye, Mimi.
Bye.
If you're new to my channel, I like to interview healthcare providers or other folks in the world who have drastically improved their health through diet and lifestyle changes. And then I primarily am just super passionate about home cooking, so feel free to check out some of my videos on good recipes that you can make at home to feed yourself and your family to improve your health and just enjoy your life. So thanks for being here, and have a great day.